Alright, this is a weekly open game, level 5, all normal rules in effect. We have a slash position where Tezuka has played 2 weak corners that he potentially is good sweepers for. Not a lot of combo potential for him, but he has a lot of captures available. Versus Akiyama, who clearly met one of the corners in 5, possibly with setups, and then was hit by the other weak corner. So I think you have a standard thing where second turn is likely to have more synergy. They're the one who has reacted to a card on board and set stuff up. Well, first turn has said, I want to have stuff that's easy for me to capture later. Now this is a curious move, because this is a card that is easily locked in by Tezuka if wanted, without being all that susceptible to combos. So my first instinct for Tezuka, and this could easily be wrong, I don't think we want to sequence it if you're going to go in 1. My first instinct is to go in 1. I like going in 1 in these structures more than a lot of people do. It may be correct to go for the Z, and we'll come back to that. But yeah, my first instinct was to go for 1, and it was to go for 1 with this card, with the point that if Akiyama goes in 4, I think I want to play 7-6-5-3 in 6, something that doesn't flip 5 so I'm not susceptible to combos. I'm not sure that's exactly the right card, but that's where I was sort of thinking. Now I'm a little less sold, though. Yeah, this looks like it's just playing for a tie now. Because after something like, and I might be missing something, but after something like 5-5, 6-5, and 4, you're down 6-4. I was planning 7-6-5-3 and 6, but this is just a tie. 7-1-4-7 indeed is a good sweeper, but it never really gets to sweep. So maybe the plan isn't to go in 6. But if the plan isn't to go in 6, you can't really take the combo in 8 because you're comboed back in 6. So maybe the best plan was the Q or the Z, or the S, I guess. This was my first instinct, but I think it's just forcing a tie. Yeah, I'm curious if the Q or Z had more hope, because you have this big threat of landing in 1. You don't have a great sweeper for the left, but you're not doing that badly there. Yeah, so maybe something like 7-6-5-3 and 8 was the way, instead of going in 1, because your 7-1-4-7 now sweeps the right. Any card Akiyama puts in 6, you now combo, because he has a 6 facing out, which we just set up to plus. He has a 7 facing out, which we plus wall. Sure, that has a plus, which flips, El Noel flips 3, but it combos through 5 still, and so you combo back. And 6-5-4-6 has a 4 facing out, which you plus wall. And also that card is safe to 9. And so 7-1-4-7 is gonna at least go +1 on the right. Kind of the worst case situation for that card is they play safely in 9 and you go in 6, but you're gonna at least grab 3. And then you have 5-7-6-4 for the left, which Akiyama had no combos in 6, so at least flips, in 4. So it at least flips 2 and anything in 4. This looks really good to me. I think 7-6-5-3-8 was the answer. I'm gonna pop open the solver because I'm not sure, but that's my guess at this position. And I also think I want to, another thing is, I think one of the benefits of playing slashes and playing positions that are a little more unforcing, there's a lot of options, is you give your opponent room to go wrong. And I think Tezuka does a nice job at that. It doesn't always find the precise way to play it, but I could easily be wrong that there was a precise way to play it. I think 8 worked, though. And I get the draw to 1 because I was also drawn to 1. That was my first instinct, was go 1. Ah, he has the 7653 set up after. The problem is here, Akiyama can go. Wait up. What happened? What? I'm so confused by this game. I must be a moron. Something weird happened here. Okay, so Akiyama had 2 ties after this slash setup. So great pressure by Tezuka, and moves were not obvious at all. After this move in 2, oh, 8 moves 1? What am I doing? So I thought 7653 and 8 was the move. That is a win. But basically everything won here. 5764 and 7 does indeed win. What was I doing? Yeah, and 4 to 8 wins. Ah, because there's the plus wall in 6. I missed there was a plus wall in 6. Alright. In conclusion, I'm a moron. Tezuka's great. Well won by Tezuka. No idea what was going on in my head. I mean, I do know. I missed that 7147 had this plus wall in 6, which is why Akiyama had to block 6. I was like, but there's no plus there. What's the issue? But Tezuka had this well under control and was winning with almost any move after the move in, or like about half the moves. And I thought he had blown it because I missed the plus wall, but Tezuka had not blown it. Tezuka had spotted everything, and I have egg on my face, to use a phrase that is very common among the youth these days, for sure. Okay, so let's flip over. Nice win by Tezuka. Terribly analyzed by me. That's okay. My excuse will be I hopped in late, but I get things wrong. I got things wrong here. I missed a plus wall. Uh, Without that plus wall, I bet I'm right. I guess is where I'm going. But yeah, that plus wall is pretty important. Okay, terrible job by me again. But okay, let's flip you over to the solver for a moment. And in this position, there are 3 ties. You can see they are in 1, 1, and 4. What would draw you to those squares? If you're looking at Tezuka's hand, Tezuka only has combo play through 5 in 6 and 8. So if you're thinking, I need to block the squares my opponent is good in, you don't really end up on the right squares. Now, this is the only capture that has safety. Yeah, there's no other side square that has safety. It is combo susceptible, but you potentially have combos back because you have play in 6 and 8. But this is the only way you can play in a side that poses a genuine challenge to your opponent. So this makes sense to check. I don't think you look at this move and immediately think, yeah, this is safe, I have no problems here. But it does make sense as a move you'd check. So I think that one's a move that should be a candidate move. I've seen some players talk and they learn a correct move and they go, well, I should have played that. That makes sense. I think that's kind of the wrong way of thinking because there's always going to be a bunch of moves in a position that or not always, but there's often going to be a bunch of moves in a position that could make sense to you. The question is, how do you successfully differentiate the actually correct ones that make sense from the incorrect ones that make sense? Because we're all going to have multiple understandings that are going to lead us to multiple moves being plausible, and we need reasons to sort of accept this one as good and go, that one doesn't seem to work here. And so, just because some move seemed normal and you made a move that ended up losing because you missed something, but some other move seemed normal and that would have held, and you go, oh, I should have seen that. That's a move, or I did see that. I should have played it, but I did see it, so I could have played it. I think that might be missing a little of how kind of the pruning works, and one of the things I think Turds has done a really nice job of, for instance, in TTAC, is when to play normal versus when to go off the beaten path. He had this move at 9 this past round that was just a phenomenal, very difficult to find move, found the best general plan in the position, and a pretty obscure one. But has also repeatedly made some games that in recent past that were just like making the safe right move and doing a really nice job of when there's a bunch of options, having a good feel for of these three reasonable looking options, just picking the best one each time, but also when more creativity is needed, also finding that creativity. So just because 4 makes sense does not mean it makes more sense than other things. You need the comparative case. And I don't see an obvious reason why you'd look at 1. I think it said 2 of the ties were in 1. Yeah, 2 ties were in 1, here and here. It is not, there's a bunch of synergy there, at least for one of those moves. But some for both. Like, there's certainly some combo potential there. I guess it makes sense to say I have combo play in 6 and 8, and everything's working badly for me. I'm going to maximize combo play by giving myself 2 and 4. I guess that makes sense. So if we were thinking about this a few different ways, the way of block what my opponent has. Well, it turns out you both have play in the same squares, 6 and 8, which is an interesting effect. Usually second turn then wants to get rid of those squares because first turn will get to finish on those squares, and 7-1-4-7, for instance, is both of 6 and 8. So it's interesting here that both of those are wrong. And obviously, to figure this out, we'd have to go in more depth. I'm just kind of running on general principle. But it's interesting that 6 and 8 are both wrong, because that is an appealing thing to do. Secondly, there's I need to maximize my squares. 1 does that, and 1 is correct. We have 6 and 8, we don't have 2 and 4. If we're just trying to maximize how much potential we have in our hand to land on the board, going in 1 actually does make a lot of sense. Then there's where can I sort of grab safety or something difficult for them to take. Now 6-5-4-6 and 4 is a very unconvincing way to do so because it is combo susceptible through 5, but it is a move that should be a candidate move simply because its number facing out is a valuable number to have facing out. Very tricky position. And again, I calculated this so badly, but Tezuka found a nice win and played it quickly and well. And spotted the 7-6-5-3 and 8 idea, just spotted that he'd do it a turn later, and it would all work beautifully because 7-1-4-7 sweeps there. And there was no rush to it. Yeah, nicely played by Tezuka, badly analyzed by me. Interesting position. Interesting position. Think about how to defend that from second turn. And it ended up being, I was also wrong in my analysis at the start. Sorry to stumble over that word. It ended up being similar synergies for both players with threats in 6 and 8. It's always interesting when the correct response from the second turn player, this is more often the case from the first turn player, is not to get rid of combo squares, but to leave them open, but to give yourself compensatory combo squares. So like 6-5-4-6 and 1 now seems to me the natural move there. I'm not quite sure why 5-5-6-5 there works, but 6-5-4-6 seems a neat idea, setting up pluses in both 2 and 4. Yeah, very complicated slash, very easy to go wrong, and speaks to the power. This was something I was sort of talking about in TTAC. Is Tezuka often has this nice feel. He often starts with weak corners in tournament games. And in my way of framing it, and I'm sure he would frame it differently, it's this kind of, 1, he can keep himself with a balanced hand. If he plays a 5-corner hand and uses a double corner, like one of his extras for a corner at the start is a weak corner, he will have a card he can take and a balanced hand remaining. And we could focus on the balanced hand remaining, but for the moment, I want to focus on first turn likes to see low numbers so they can sweep late game, and all their cards have multiple uses because many of their cards will be able to capture said weak corner. And here, I'm not sure if the order was 3-5-7 or 7-5-3, but either way, what Tezuka did was he created a position where, and I think it was probably 3-5-7, but I could be wrong. He created, yeah, as said, I often am, but he created a position where there was a lot of weak stuff facing out, and he had pretty good sweeping corners. He had a corner for 1, a corner for 9, much like you might in a hand game, um, and a corner for 7 remaining. He had kept a pretty balanced hand with powerful sweepers that could attack the weak numbers. And you can really see that paying off here, and it didn't end up paying off in TTAC. It just never quite aligned right, and Turds was able to attack it really effectively. Great play by Turds in that match. I think Turds and Akiyama's quarterfinal matches were masterpieces by them. But here we can really see it paying off and see the difficulties it creates for the second turn player. All right, we'll stop there.